Welcome friends from different parts of the world. I'm Flavio Battaglia, Director of the Lean Institute Brazil.
And I'm Cristina Foncuberta, developer and trainer at the Lean Institute in Spain. We would like to welcome you to this very special session called Fixing Healthcare Faster, the 5 Global Principles. Last year, the Lean Global Network published a white paper called The 5 Guiding Principles to Transform Healthcare. This is one of the outcomes of our research effort started in 2015 with the purpose of increasing our understanding and knowledge of how to transform healthcare with lean thinking and practice. Do you hear?
So we believe that these 5 principles can help us to reduce the amount of time and the effort required to create sustainability, create the lean sustainability, the capabilities that we need to keep the transformation running. Well, the first principle, we call it don't wait for the CEO, and it relates with the need of not depending on the high-level leaders to initiate the change or keep it moving forward. The second principle is what is your next move and why? And it's about looking at your next step in the transforming, often addressing a pressing business issue. The third principle, we call it make it your own problem. It encourages area managers and frontline people to really own the problems, who they identify, and to take the responsibility for its resolution. The fourth principle, the right knowledge for the right people at the right time, reminds us that the blanket training is not a solution to our people. It's not enough to develop their needs. And the fifth principle, we call it the cross-pollination. It refers to the all-important idea of Yokoten, knowledge sharing, and explain how powerful this can be in the lean transformation. In this session, we decided to go deeper on these 5 principles by asking healthcare leaders how they understand and apply each one of these principles in their own reality. Now, let's see where is our team all around the world. Where is our team?
Flavio, Christina, it's so great to be here with you today, even if it is virtually. It's the second best thing, but maybe soon we'll be together in person. Together in 2015, LGN created a global study initiative aiming to increase our understanding and knowledge on how to transform healthcare with lean thinking and practice. At that time, lean was being applied with great enthusiasm for many different hospitals around the world for at least the last 10 years.
The results were impressive, the number of practitioners was growing, the impacts were spreading, but our perception at that time was that if we kept moving in that rhythm, it would take at least 100 years to change the industry. And maybe we did not have that amount of time.
Yes, Flavio, it was before COVID.
Yeah, our basic questions at this moment were how we can reduce the time and efforts to create capability. And on the other side, how we can accelerate this lean learning, adoption and sustainability.
So to answer these questions, we decided to work together so we could learn together. And we soon realised that the best way of doing it would be to go and see each other's work at the Gemba to truly grasp the situation.
So we went to hospitals together to observe, collect data, and have a common understanding of the multiple dimensions of the lean transformation. The result of our learning journey was captured by a short white paper called The 5 Guiding Principles to Transform Healthcare.
Since then, we have been using what we learned together, trying to reshape the way we work with hospitals and other industries. This session is dedicated to deepening the discussion on the 5 guiding principles by bringing real-life examples on how they can be applied in healthcare, explained by these 5 leaders.
So today in this session, this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to explain these 5 principles by the 5 original coaches that we have here together. We have Alice, we have Denise, we have Slava, we have Flavio, the leader of the initiative, and myself, Oriol. And also we have today with us 5 lean and healthcare leaders. We have Olga, we have David, we have Fred, we have Javier, and we have Kiami. In order to explain this better and with examples. And now I will ask my friend Alice to explore these 5 principles. So Alice, where is Alice?
Having the CEO engaged in the transformation of people and systems is important, of course, but does it mean the CEO needs to personally lead from the start? One of the most common complaints we hear from lean practitioners is they cannot move forward without the CEO. Now, obviously, we all want the CEO on board, and that's the best case. But the reality is they are busy with lots of priorities and even crises happening on a day-to-day basis. And in our research, we learned that, yes, sure, that would be the best scenario, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary because you can start wherever you are and work toward engaging the CEO. What you don't want is a negative CEO, but it's okay to have a neutral CEO to get started. And that drives how you approach your transformation. It doesn't stop you. I will talk some more about how it is possible to start a transformation with small improvements, with local impact, which builds momentum and spread through an organization. And that, of course, gets the CEO's attention. Now let's talk to a couple of senior leaders about this first principle, don't wait for the CEO. Kiami, what does the principle, don't wait for the CEO, mean to you?
So on the issue of don't wait for the CEO, I think I look at it in at least 2 different perspectives. Number one, obviously, is the one that was traditionally meant, and I first encountered this when I read Taishi Ono, in which when he started his work, he essentially only started doing work on his line. He was asked, well, why are you only doing work on your line? His answer was, well, it's the only line that I have influence on, so that's what I'm going to be working on. And so I think the idea of don't wait for the CEO is really this idea that if you do truly believe that it's the front line, that the worker at the Gemba that owns the knowledge and the skills necessary to make a change, there are obviously a number of things that can be changed by the front line, by a supervisor, by a manager, by a director, whatever your hierarchy is. There are a number of things, obviously, that have to be changed at a system level. So I'm in healthcare. So I imagine that if you're a receptionist and you're facing a busy waiting room, now the fact that there's a waiting room to start with may not be something that you as a receptionist can control, but you may be able to control, do you tell the patients how long their particular clinician is behind? Do you find a way perhaps of automating that process? Do you find a way of communicating with the team behind, oh, by the way, you are 4 patients behind? Or in our case, if 90% of your patients live within a half mile of the health center, do you say, oh, you can go home, you can go shopping, you can do whatever you want, and I'll call you when you're 5 minutes out. So in terms of empowering the front line, that's one certainly aspect of don't wait for the CEO, meaning that there are always things that you can do that can further the quality of the work that you're providing to the customer. Now, I want to be very clear, there are also things that cannot be engaged, cannot be changed until you have alignment of the whole system. But those are the things that you avoid if you're director of a particular aspect. You work in the things that you can actually change. And I think that even though that sounds counterintuitive, as human beings living in a large, complex society, we do it all the time. You get out of your house, you're in charge of your driveway, you're in charge of your garage, you're in charge of your car, but you're not really in charge of the road. You're not in charge of the snow clearing, you're not in charge of the road repair. And so you do what you can. You may pick up, for instance, you and your neighbors may decide to chainsaw a trunk that's fallen across the road that's blocking your neighborhood, but you acknowledge that actually fixing the road or putting in place new, I don't know, electrical cable that goes beyond you, but yet you've acknowledged that there's a certain level of responsibility that you have in controlling what you do.
Interesting. You see this principle, don't wait for the CEO, as people empowered to improve what they should without waiting for permission or a committee, if you will. I think this is related to where you are in your lean thinking journey. What's your second perspective on this principle?
I think that's the easy part. I think the second part is looking at it from the CEO or leader's perspective. When I read or hear, don't wait for the CEO, what I hear is that one of my jobs is to make sure that the people who are doing the work are capable of doing the work. You can't say, don't wait for the CEO if nobody is trained in lean principles. You can't say, don't wait for the CEO if you're not willing to grant people some level of independence in resolving their problems. So I think don't wait for the CEO. There's a classic meaning, which is do what you can, start where you are, or as the Buddhists say, here I am, meaning that's just where you are and that's where you have to work. And the second part is for leaders, which is how do you make it so that people can actually live that mantra of don't wait for the CEO?
Okay, thank you, Alice, for introducing the principle, and especially thank you to Dr. Kiami for this excellent example from your personal, very, very personal experience. I cannot add more to this principle. Everything has been said. Maybe to reinforce the idea of the chief architect, of the change agent, the importance of this, and especially the area manager. We know that having the 5 principles, so when we can meet the 5 principles in our healthcare organization, it's a paved way to lean transformation. We know that having maybe 4 of these, maybe it's a not comfortable path. Something is not excellent. When we have just 3 of these principles, okay, this is not recommended, and so and so and so. But there is one of them that is a must, that is this principle. Because, okay, we don't need to wait for the CEO. But really, the coaching of the chief architect, the change agent, and the ownership of the area manager, this is a must. To have a different point of view or another point of view, today I would like you to invite to travel to the Alt Penedès Garraf Healthcare Consortium. That is a group of hospitals that there is in South Barcelona, where I think that now we can meet Dr. Olga Ferrer. Yes, I see her. Okay, good afternoon, good evening, Dr. Ferrer.
Good evening, Uriel, good evening. How are you?
Quite good, quite good. You know that today I'm in Tenerife doing these connections, trying to keep everything in place. How is in Barcelona?
We are fine. We are here in a cold time, but we are doing okay.
Okay, that's excellent. A very good job. Today I will try to invite you how this principle that we have just been talking about is applied in your hospitals, in the Alt Penedès Garraf Healthcare Consortium.
Well, Oriol, we have been using Lean since a lot of years ago, and from our experience of success and fails, more the first, I think, or I hope, I cannot agree more with this principle. As you know, Lean is based in the 3 Ps: purpose, problem, process, and people. And who know better than the teams themselves about the 3 Ps? Who know better the problems? The teams. And who know better the real process uses? The team. And who know better the people? The team, of course. So Lean cannot be done by CEOs or the management community. It has to be done by teams and led by area managers with the coaching from chief architects. This is why our strategy here in the consortium has been to train almost everybody and create the environment where teams can flourish, a coaching for every team. And we can say that A3 and Lean initiative pop-ups anywhere in our hospital.
Okay, I understand how you apply this principle and why teams are so important, because as you said, they are where is the 3 Ps, and when CEOs or even the management are not so important for. But can you give us an example of how we can understand this principle?
Yes, I will try it. In our case, our aim is that teams create something as important as their own transversality, our goal, having patient, of course, at the center. Pneumology team create their own processes through Plan for Every Patient. Transversality is a goal for the consortium. Pneumology addressing their own problems, aligning different parts at the hospitals and beyond, as we are actually linking with primary care. So this is not only difficult to apply, but it's also sometimes difficult to understand.
That's for sure. So I understand how this pneumology, a small pneumology team, align at different parts of the hospital, even beyond of the hospital, reaching primary care. So solving some of the hospital problems, that is this transversality, just giving them a problem. So solving the problem from themselves, from this, applying this small PFP. Excellent example, Dr. Farre, really. I hope to see you quite soon, maybe in a couple of principles, again, to see your understanding. And now, Tim, I think that we are now ready for the second principle.
Thanks, Ariel and Olga. Just to demonstrate how truly global we are, we're now bringing the next principle to you from Australia. My name's Denise Bennett, and we're just getting into summer down here in Adelaide and now starting to open up to the world, which is wonderful. My background is nursing, turned improver, and I'm proud to introduce to you the second principle from our guiding principles, which is what is your next move and why? What I've certainly learned over the years is there's not one way of going about implementing a lean transformation in healthcare or in any business. As I said, my background is healthcare, but I also helped translate lean principles into local government several years ago. And I must say, I don't find the principles that we've come up for healthcare too different than what I've used in local government as well. In terms of being your first move or your second move, it's really situational. What is the need within the organisation? What are the pressing problems that our patients or customers have? What are the issues for staff? What are the issues for your organisation? It might be a technical problem, like too many patients, too much waiting, too many incidents, how to deal with a pandemic. Or it might be more social or cultural in nature. It might be staff frustration or low engagement, maybe poor performance, or what the problem of an unstable environment, which truly responds really well to some of these lean techniques and practices. I think what's the really important thing to remember is to take time to stop and reflect and adjust, be humble enough to say, maybe this thing that we're doing here is not working, and maybe we should just change course based on, what we've learned, what we've achieved, and the problems that we need to address in the next coming time period. So to help bring this principle to life, I'm now joined by David Plunkett, who is the CEO from Eastern Health, Melbourne, Australia. David's been the CEO for the past 5 years, and he was the Chief Nursing Officer before that, and has been part of the improvement effort for many years. I'm sure he's had many opportunities to reflect on what should be our next move and why over their improvement journey. Welcome, David. It's pretty early in the morning here in Australia, so thanks for getting up so early and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Denise. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Great to see you again.
You too. And so in regard to this principle, we'll get straight into it. Feels like a chess move or a dance move or something, this principle. But I have a question for you specifically. So in addressing the challenges of the past 18 months, your next move was to commit more deeply to your lean management system, increasing the involvement of your senior team. Has this been an effective strategy, and was it the right move at the right time?
Thanks, Denise. And I agree, it is like a game of chess that you play, and which move do you play when? Bit of a tactical deployment, if you like, is another way that I've heard it described. You know, what's your tactics today, and how do you shift and shape where you're going based on where you are? I think it absolutely was the right move. It was the right strategy to do. Eastern Health has a long history in adopting many of the principles of lean, but in fact, it requires continuous work. And we've had a sort of a period, I suppose, where I wouldn't say we've lost our way, but I would say that we've probably over-engineered some of the things that we needed to do, that we should have done. And it was becoming a bit complex and probably not to the intent of what lean is all about. I'm not sure that we were as respectful to our people as we should have been. And therefore, the feedback that we received from our team in looking at where there are exemplars having applied a lean management system to their organisation and comparing and contrasting where we were, I could see that we were off the boil for where we needed to be. So for me, the most important part was clearly I'm a supporter of a lean management system, and as you say, particularly into our daily system, which as part of this program we renamed to be called Together Daily. Our mission statement it starts with the word together. So it was really important to symbolically say that we are in this together. And to have the executive leadership team deliver and work through our improvement program around our daily system, I could see there could be no downside in being able to therefore bring to life our entire lean management system over the past 18 months, if not longer, and we've still got a long way to go. It is certainly one of those where the move, some of the moves will change as we move forward and as we become more mature, more individually capable of using the lean management system, and how we demonstrate that connection with the people who are providing direct care and service, those on the front line, those that in essence as a leadership team we are in service to.
Thanks, David. I wonder if you could just maybe give me one example of what a deeper commitment by your executive team might mean to you, or might have changed practices in the organisation over the past year or so.
One really great example, I think, Denise, is our recognitions. As part of our daily system, recognising the good work and how people have delivered on our vision, our true north, was one area that we did not do well. We didn't celebrate the successes of people, no matter how big or small, and their efforts. And that has completely turned around now, where I think that we have embedded that forevermore, and we're probably going to require a tweak every now and then. But for me, it brings such joy to work in being able to focus on the positives and the commitment and the dedication that people bring, whether it be the really small things or the past 18 months, so much effort around managing our COVID pandemic. Again, recognising those efforts, it has shifted the mindset and shifted the way that we think about ourselves, and particularly how we recognise those who are solving problems.
Thanks, David. That's they're great illustrations of how you've used your lean management system. We're going to move on to our next principle, and I look forward to inviting you back, David, to discuss our fourth principle today.
Thanks, Denise.
So, Cami, as the CEO at Lynn Community Health Center, you and I talk often about the next move and what we should do next given where we are. And creating examples of what's possible, a model, if you will, of what good and better looks like, tied to a real business problem, has served us well. It's also a great way to engage others and to learn quickly, and that includes a CEO if they aren't personally participating. So why don't you tell us, what does this principle, what is your next or first move, if you will, and why? Why select this next move?
What is your next move? That is a challenging question. The reason I think it's complicated is that a number of things come into play. Number one, in general in lean, we're worried about sustainability of the movement, meaning that there's plenty of horror stories going on where somebody starts something and then they leave after 2 or 3 years, and then whatever it is that they started dies with the new management team. So I think part of the temptation, therefore, when you know that your horizon is only 2 to 5 years as a particular leader, part of the temptation is to do something that shows beautiful results, that shows tangible results, that shows noticeable results within 2 to 5 years. And so that means that the temptation to go somewhere where they've already done it, see what they've done, and then replicate it in your institution is very, very strong. And the difficulty with that is that I found that healthcare can be so particular and institutions can be so particular that the way to determine what your next step is to delve quite deeply into what your current state is. In your particular current state as a hospital, you may be in a completely different place than the hospital that you visit. I was reading a book on solving the right things. And one of the assumptions in solving the right things is that as a leader, you can walk onto the floor and there is visual management tools for you to be able to see what's happening on that particular team. It means that you really have to take the situation that you're in, that your institution is, that a particular department is, and sometimes that a particular person is in, and you have to develop your particular plan to fit that particular situation.
So you believe the way to determine your next move is situational, including where a person's capability is?
And I think this is why the lean movement can be unattractive. It means that you have to invest a tremendous amount in developing people. It means that you have to get your people to be technically capable, to know what tools are out there, to know what's possible in order for them to develop as managers, as supervisors, as lead coaches, as frontline problem solvers. It's very difficult to adopt a solution from somewhere else and expect it to be sustainable. It has to be homegrown so that people have a true sense of ownership and have really believed that the solutions that they are coming up with are addressing problems that they identified, that they decided were a priority, and therefore that they really have a strong vested interest in maintaining the particular change that happens by improving it.
So Kiami, your goal is to develop people to own, improve, and sustain the processes in which they work. And you started by asking, how do we get to a point where our frontline doesn't have to get what they need to do their work through heroics and firefighting? How can we help them reduce some of the chaos? Is that right?
In our particular case at the health center, our next move really for the last 3 to 4 years has been moving from chaos to stability. We are kings of doing in the health center world, and certainly the Lynn Community Health Center. For us, the struggle has been, and to some degree still is forcing ourselves to find the time to step away from the firefighting and say, okay, what do I need to do so that there's no fire in 6 months or a year? And obviously that can be frustrating because you take a lot of time to solve particular problems or other fires are raging. But there is no choice that if you want to create stability, you create it in bits at a time. And if you have enough people throughout your institution doing that, and obviously you've melded all of those efforts into satisfying one key business goal, meaning that your people are moving in a particular direction that's been set. Having enough people working in stability means that eventually you get the whole system to be stable.
Kiana, can you provide an example of your initial focus on moving from chaos to stability?
As an example of chaos to stability, ironically, the COVID pandemic did provide us with an arena in which to live our principles. One of the convenient things about COVID is that nobody knew nothing about anything. That meant that when we, from one day to the next, made everybody go home and work through telemedicine, and then we were starting to establish infectious control protocols and how we're going to do testing when we had no test equipment and we had no PPE, it meant that we were aligned. We had this goal that everyone was aligned with, which is how do we keep our hospital doors open, meaning that what do we do as an ambulatory institution to take care of as many patients as possible? So then you take a step back and you say, okay, how do we keep our staff safe and infection free so they can keep providing in-person services to a completely terrified population, and also, the caregivers themselves were terrified. And so one thing that happened though is because we had that unified goal, because we knew everybody in the system knew where we were going, it was actually decently easy to work every day to stabilize a particular issue. And the joke is that sometimes we would have a job breakdown sheet or a standard that would change multiple times in the day, meaning that we said, okay, we only have 10 N95 masks and we have to take care of X amount of patients. What do we do? What's the standard? How are we going to clean those masks? How long can the person wear it? But there were times where in a day we would change a standard 7 or 8 times, simply keeping up with the changing imperatives. And the amazing thing about it is that the changes were done by the people who were doing the work, meaning that we were able to have frontline involved in the standards, and we were able to keep improving our standards as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Now we have been talking about the second principle, so which is the next or the first step. And we know now in this third principle that the steps have to be problems, but these problems have to be our own problem. These problems have to be owned by the team. I think that I have Olga with me, Dr. Farré. Hello, Dr. Farré.
Hello.
I would like to chat a little with you about this third principle, because we know that we have to create this ownership. If the teams doesn't own the problems, these problems probably are not going to be successfully solved, especially in healthcare. And to do this, we need to connect with the heart and minds. What is your view about this principle?
Yes, so ownership and responsibility, but not only in the execution, on the deployment of any assistential program, clinical improvement, or area organization, but to choose the right problem to be addressed. Ownership and responsibility means autonomy as well.
But then from your words, I can understand that teams can choose any problem, any solution, any proposal?
Yes, sure. But this is where coaching appears again with Hoshin.
Hoshin. Okay. I have heard this word many times tonight. Can you explain us a little more what is Hoshin?
Yes, Hoshin is a strategy deployment based on key indicators and PDCA. Once agreed on the indicator, it's easy to agree on the gaps, on the problems that need to be addressed.
Okay. So you use Hoshin in a way that the teams can find their own gaps. They can find their own real problems. This is how, in your case, in your healthcare organization, you do that.
Yes, and this is where it starts.
Okay. So this is where it starts. Because usually in another organizations, where they start is with solutions that have been chosen by management that just need to be deployed. So the team, the only thing that they have to do is just to perform the execution. But as I understand, this is not your approach.
No, because as you know, after a solution, team arises new problems that can be tried to solve, but new problems to new solutions appear, and so on like this. a solution is followed by problems to be real.
Okay, so the proposal is not to start with a solution, but we start with a problem, in your case, from the Hoshin.
Yes, the Hoshin itself proposed a problem that needs to be addressed, and teamwork in PDCA for a solution.
Okay, and this is where coaching appears again, to help team to from the problem to a proposal, to a solution. Okay, but this is a little confusing for me still. Can you give us an example of how this works in your healthcare organization, in your hospitals?
Yes, of course, Oriol. I will try to explain it with an example, with a big example, I think. Last year, in the review of Hoshin indicators, we realized that we had a problem which was the cause of many of our patients' complaints. The waiting time between the appointment and the administration of chemotherapy was too long. We passed the problem to the pharmacy department to analyze it. The pharmacy staff didn't believe it. The process was seen by them as just in time. They prepared the chemotherapy and administered it to the patients. Preparing the chemotherapy every day generate a lot of unnecessary waiting times. When they analyzed the process, they realized that 85% of the chemotherapies had already been confirmed the day before. The rest of the chemotherapies were depending on the patient's clinical situation on the day that the treatment was administered. So therefore, they reorganized the process to prepare all the confirmed chemotherapies the day before to be able to schedule those patients first in the morning, and then they had time to prepare the rest during the morning as the treatments were confirmed. This is for us an example of how we transfer the problem and not the solutions to the work teams.
Okay, so everything started with the team owning the problem. So a problem that they didn't know that they have, okay, thanks to Hoshin, they understood that there was a problem, so they analyze the problem, they go deep in the problem, and of course they propose a very consistent solution. Okay, I see.
Yes, Oriol, that's right. Problems are treasures. For us, big problems means the same as big solutions. Finding right problems is making the right question at the right time, and this can only be done by the right people. This is how we can make the difference.
And this is why the problems have to be owned by the people. So make the problem their own problem. I see. Thank you very much, Dr. Farré, for tonight's examples and experience that you hold. Big hug for all the hospitals and all the teams in the consortium. And I think that the only thing that we can do now is to give the stick to Americas, because I think that there is also a good example to share out this principle.
Hi, Dr. Javier. Thanks for joining us at this session and share your learnings. We are going to talk about the third principle, and we call it making it your own problem for one reason. The most sustainable lean initiatives we found were highly associated with the strong ownership of the area managers. They are the ones who must truly recognize problems and stragglers and create real space for experimentation and learning at different levels of the organization. The challenge seems to be winning people from the dependence on the improvement team or the specialists and create real ownership and sustainable capability. Dr. Javier, what does this principle mean to you?
Hi, Flavio. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening to everybody. It is a pleasure for me to be part of this great panel. So yes, Flavio, I agree with you. I think that this is a very, very important principle. You need to welcome problems. We all know that problems are great opportunities for improvement. In our case, in healthcare for patients. We know that, to have red, that's what we call here in the hospital, it's okay. What is not okay is to stay in red. But as you mentioned, people need to own the problems. They need to be emotionally connected with the problems to be able to participate and have buy-in and also be part of the improvement process. And as you also mentioned, I think it's very important to have the leaders of every department also involved in solving problems.
And could you give us some practical examples of how does this principle apply in your organization?
Sure. Actually, I can come up with one, a problem that we tried to solve that was trying to improve patient flow in the OR. So this was back in 2014. We started looking into why we were delaying, our cases. And we put together a team. And in this team, we had surgeons. And when we asked them, what was the reason why we were not starting on time in the first case, they actually thought that, the problem was from someone else. They were not actually responsible for that. So they said it's admission. We need to put more people in admission to admit the patients fast to be able for them to start on time. So we started tracking, what was happening. And the results, the end of the story was that 70% of the time, it was due to the surgeons. Only 5% admissions were responsible for the delays. And that's when they actually realized that they had to be part of solving this issue, because we realized, for example, that maybe the informed consent was not signed on time, and that delayed the surgery. Another reason was they were not in the OR, and they couldn't start with the checklist. So, we couldn't start on time. And another reason, they didn't give the right instructions to the nurses. So the nurses didn't know exactly how to prepare the patients before the surgery. So by tracking data and looking into it and making them participate in this process, they actually took ownership, and we were able to solve the issue.
Dr. Javier, thank you very much. It's a great example. Hi, Dr. Fred. Thanks for joining us at this session. We are going to talk about the fourth principle, and we call it the right knowledge for the right people at the right time. And the reason why is that because we found out that inside most part of the lean organizations, the organizations that were trying to do lean, we found in some cases, the overload of information, overtraining, people inside rooms for many, many hours being trained or trying to get certificate. And we realized that this is not the case, because people inside the healthcare environment, they're quite busy, they're quite overloaded, especially nowadays. So, and what does this principle mean to you, Dr. Fred?
Hi, Flavio. Thank you for inviting me to join this session. Well, I love to talk about this principle, because it's about meaningful training and meaningful knowledge acquisition. I mean, there's no value at all in mass training unless you have like some special situation on that. But we have to work a lot to create meaningful training for people, and we are working on that for long now, because people understand what they learn from their work, and they learn from what they really need. So we cannot use them like deliver a lot of knowledge that is useless. There's no relation to what they're doing. In these pandemic days, there's a lot of mass training associated with e-learning, and we are learning how to learn again using these new channels like the one we are using right now. So we can deliver some kind of mass training on demand, and it's cool because people can come back and try to do it again or make it later when it's really needed. So it's a new way to use it, and it's working, but it's not the same about mass training. So we can provide a lot of knowledge, make it available, but we will consume it as needed, and that's the idea behind this principle.
And could you give us some practical examples of how does this principle is applied in your organization?
Yes, well, I've been working, like I have a few examples, but I've been working with the public healthcare system here in my city for more than 5 years, supporting their lean initiatives. In one of primary care facility that we were discussing and proposing them to introduce a daily huddle for daily readiness, we are using the 5 principles that, but actually we don't use them separately. We use them all together. So we discuss about cross-pollination, show them how we do our daily huddles. We discuss problem ownership and what's our next move, everything almost at the same time. But at that point, when the morning huddle was understood and we had a draft of it on a small experiment, 2 weeks later, they by themselves developed a midday huddle, do shift change, and at the end of the day, huddle to prepare the next morning huddle for addressing problems that emerged during the end of the day. So, and that point, these changes would impact the next morning readiness, like some drugs that are not available or problems with engineering or infrastructure. So this is a great example of how ownership and next move and meaningful knowledge means, because they learned how to do a huddle. They got their own ownership about this huddle, and they decided that it was not enough. They needed to move a little further to get a better understanding and explore better that tool that it's really good. And now they have 3 huddles in a day, and they're doing quite well with that. So they're very, very happy with the results they're having. Another terrible example is about the COVID-19 pandemic. Can anyone remember what happened in 2020 by March or April? Every single worker was demanding hard training about safety, and they were fully engaged with any training proposal that we had. So before we had empty training rooms, and now we have crowded training rooms. That is a problem about the pandemic days. It's a new problem because there's no enough room for everyone now. So extra training was required all the time to support this unexpected new reality. At that point, I was leading a really big emergency department here in San Jose with more than 2,000 visits per month. And our safety KPIs skyrocketed. Everyone was following every safety protocol we had in the hospital. What's the meaning of that? The response is very easy. This is a skin in the game problem. So everyone was concerned and afraid of COVID. So they were following every safety protocol because they knew that if they got some chance to get COVID, and they could get very sick about it. So we created a lot of new routines and new standards and new protocols using what we could do with TWI methods, because we had not enough time to develop a full and to develop a full method and full training for everyone. But we used created basic standards, and we had a lot of personnel shortage due to flu syndromes that we had to put them out of job because we had to wait for the COVID test that was taking like more than a week to get ready for that. So it was very terrible, but people were badly affected for that problem, and they got fully engaged with the training and with the solution. So this is the real idea behind the right knowledge for the right people at the right time, because we had the real problem, we had the knowledge, and we had the time, and we had to do it. So that's when the problem is mine, and I'm deeply involved with that. I will go for a standard. I will understand the meaning of that. That's the idea behind of it.
Thanks, Dr. Fred. It is a great example, and we are going to move for the next principle. Thank you.
Good.
So David, welcome back to the main stage. We're here now to look at our 4th principle, which is really about creating the right knowledge for the right people at the right time. I wonder what this principle has meant to you in your journey at Eastern Health.
That's another great question, Denise. So I might start with me and what it meant for me. And one of my great learnings was, in fact, going to Gemba and seeing this in alive and well, particularly at Stanford. Both children's and adult, and being able to see the whole gamut of a lean management system in place. And I realized then what I didn't know about it, and I continue to learn each and every day to be more capable from in the use of the system and what it means for how an organization will operate, because it's not just about, it's not this segment, it's in fact the whole lot. for me as to how that works. And so now that when I saw my gap, I was able to reflect on the executive leadership team and where we were at as a team, individually and collectively, around the right knowledge and being able to see where our gaps were. Some of those were our basic understanding of what does a lean management system mean, and therefore having a shared understanding to therefore deliver some shared, well, both individual and shared deliveries. No, that's a bad word, but for the executive leadership team to see for themselves where the journey will go was important for me, so that they could understand where we were heading. Having undertaken the Gemba as I did a couple of times now, but particularly in 2019 was when I really took a hard look at where we were. And we needed to grow in many facets. But one of the most important areas for us to grow in was, in fact, our problem-solving approach. And how did we have a look at this? And we are nowhere near there yet. Like all leaders, we've got a bell curve of people who are, certainly leading from the front, and others who are grappling with this a little bit. But in essence, our jobs is about solution setting and problem solving for people. So how do we pause as really busy, high pressured jobs that we have to make sure that we follow a scientific program of problem solving? Was one of the biggest lessons that we're still on the journey of learning and making sure that we are all equally capable.
So how are you going about learning about problem solving? Are you sitting in a classroom all day? You obviously talked about Gemba a little bit. How does that learning happen?
Most of that learning, Denise, actually happens on the spot, in the job, solving problems through the use of coaching techniques and just having support from experts who are able to take us back and just make sure that we do consider things logically and sequentially is really how we're doing it. We had a little bit of theory, but really most of it has actually been, how do I apply this? And using those real life examples and experiences and problems to, in fact, embed the capability in the way that we work, so that we can then apply that no matter whether we're solving large problems or, in fact, small problems. And how do we then use our own capability to be able to coach others in problem solving?
Thanks, David. I have seen you in action coaching, and you are really developing your skills in that area. And for me, it's a real privilege to see a CEO who's not only humble enough, but curious enough to take this path and want to learn how to be a better coach on a day-by-day basis. So thanks for your contribution to this principle. I think a bit later on, we're going to welcome you back to the main stage to participate in our panel discussion.
Dr. Javier, finally, the fifth principle we found out that is a part of successful lean transformations in healthcare industry is cross-pollination. Cross-pollination events, we found out, helps to learn through sharing. It helps to gain deeper knowledge from learning from practical experience of others. Inside the company, inside the organization, outside of the organization, inside the industry, or even outside of the industry. We found out that at some point, people need to see some other experience to find out what good looks like, or to set up a further goal, the next step for themselves. Keeping all this in mind, what does this principle, cross-pollination, mean to you personally?
Well, Slava, I think, this principle is one of my favorite. It means a lot to me, okay? Cross-pollination has a lot of power, okay? It is a moment for sharing. It's a moment for learning. It helps inspiring people. It also, helps to recognize people's work. And I would say that it's a moment, for Kaizen and also Hansei. Cross-pollination serves to open the mind, and the heart of people that are non-believers, and actually on this cultural change that you need to acquire in the organizations. It also provides the opportunity for those who share their work to enjoy a moment where they can tell the story, okay? Well, they can tell all their great moments, their aha moments, during the journey. I have no doubt, that this principle of cross-pollination has a lot more benefits than one could imagine.
Dr. Javier, could you give us some practical examples of how you've been using cross-pollination in your organization, or maybe you've been a part of outside of your own organization?
Sure. So we in the organization we use Gemba walks. For example, when we have visitors, coming to the hospital, we invite them to go to see the Gembas. And we have the people at the front line doing the work, explain and share their journey and show the results and metrics and all the things that they have been doing to improve. The other things that we also do is try to have meetings. So for example, we have a lean day in the hospital where different departments are able to prepare posters or talks. They use the A3 format for sharing, in the posters and the talks, all the work they have been doing during the year and the results. So those are great opportunities, okay, for sharing and learning. And then between organizations, for example, we use the Lean Healthcare Summits, either national or international, to be able to participate and go and see, and learn from others what their journey looks like and what we can actually, translate to our own organization.
What could be the most maybe unexpected learning that you've gained from these cross-pollination practices?
So I would say, one from myself, for example, my unexpected personally experience was when I did a trip to Japan in 2018. I actually visited different companies that are non-healthcare, and I was able to see, for example, there was this Tier 3 supplier to Toyota, which is Isuzu Steel. The owner of the company really involved, okay, in the entire day with us, in the Gemba walk with us, reflecting with us at the end of the visit. The same thing happened with a company called Ogura Metal in Ishikawa, where we had the owner also sharing with us the entire journey. And at the end, also reflecting on what was learned and asking us, okay, what suggestions we had for the company. So those were really amazing to see the president, the owner, really involved in the daily Gemba walk with us. And another amazing, I would say, unexpected result was to see our physicians, for example, in the case of our surgeons or cardiology interventionists, when we visited, in the US, different companies there, and they were able to see and learn and transpolate, what people were doing in their industry into healthcare. So that was really a great, experience for me, to be able to see, unexpected learning from our people, our surgeons, our cardiologists, from another industry that is non-health related.
Dr. Fred, could you give several practical examples of cross-pollination practices you've been a part of or you've been organizing for your company, your organization?
Yes, Lava, yeah. Well, we have a lot of examples about cross-pollination, but one very interesting one is that the one that I'm working with a primary care unit these days, developing a lean system, a management system in this healthcare unit. And they came to our organization to learn how we were doing or lean flow and organization and hurdles and daily management. And what they did is that they came here, and they developed their own huddle system. First in the morning, early in the morning, then later in the lunchtime and late in the afternoon. So they have to manage the system all the way through, all the day through. But what they did is that they invited other primary care units to visit them, and they did the same way. So actually, it's cross-pollination through a new generation of cross-pollination. And actually, what is about cross-pollination, I think, is that we're not geniuses. We are regular people, but we can figure out when we see something that is working and that it's easy, and that makes a lot of sense for us. So we showed them a way to make it easier for them. They did it, and they invited people to come and see things working. And these people are cross-pollinating all around the system right now. I think that's the role of a chief architect, as we are discussing in our paper. So it's a way to understand and to better adopt tools that are sometimes hard to see, sometimes hard to understand how they work if you don't see it working.
It's interesting. And also, as far as I know, besides yourself, as you just described, you invite to your organization other people, and by sharing experience, your people in your organization also get a deeper understanding of what they do. Not only they go to some other organizations, but by sharing their own experience, right?
Yes, that's true as well, because we learn a lot when we teach, and we got the chance to teach the experience of, like we're talking about daily huddles, so they understand better the meaning of what they are doing, because people ask them about why you do that, what is important. Why do you need to ask this kind of questions during your early morning huddle, and you don't ask those in the afternoon huddle? So people understand about the purpose of what they're doing. And so once we are cross-pollinating to other organizations, we are at the same time improving our system by understanding better what we're doing. And
exactly.
So this is a win-win situation.
I think this is a very important addition to what traditionally cross-pollination mean, which is that we go somewhere and learn something. But sharing our experience is a big part of cross-pollination as well.
Yes.
Having said that, could you share, please, Dr. Fred, the most unexpected learning experience from cross-pollination practices so far?
Yes. When I started like 14 years ago, we had no healthcare examples that I could go and cross-pollinate with. So I had to learn it from auto parts industry. And most of what we've developed at IOV, we learned it from auto parts industry. Fortunately, we got a chance to go to the States and visit other hospitals and organizations that gave us a lot of support in cross-pollination as well. So we learned it from their gamba. But when I was in an auto part organization industry that was working with like oil filters and air filters for auto parts for cars and trucks and whatever. And they showed us their Heijunka board and how they were leveling their production. It was a great aha moment for me. It was really amazing, because I figured out in their board how we could manage our patients and how we could deal with our medical protocols using Kanban and managing patients throughout the system. And actually, we created a system that we could manage more than 1,000 patients in one single board. And actually, it's what we're doing up to these days. We are doing the same way. We evolved a lot from early days, but we're doing it in the same way. We have a huge Heijunka board that we can manage all of our patients. And for instance, we were able to reduce like 75% of emergency department visits for pain for related events for our patients. So it was a huge impact for our patients. It's a huge clinical impact. We have 75 less emergency department visits related to pain using this kind of Heijunka board. So it was a moment in the auto part industry, and it was a great acquisition for our organization all the way through, years and years going, and we're learning from that all the time.
Interesting that it's from other industry. It's not only auto organization, but it's experience gained from another industry in general. And the way you described it is you carried out the sense, the purpose of the tool they used for solving some practical issue, practical problem, and you've been able to transfer this experience of logic of solving the problem to your organization, even though it was automotive. Dr. Fred, how to avoid just simple copy-paste experience from cross-pollination practices, or how they're called, rolling out?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's a big challenge. I have a personal perspective about it, because I don't think it's bad at all if you're just copy and paste to do an experiment. And actually, I did that for some other another idea that we got from other organization, and say, well, I will just copy it exactly like it is, and I will try it for a while and see if it works. But doesn't matter how, you will have to adapt it into your system. Nothing that is copy and paste will work for long in our organization, and nothing will sustain in a different organization. So we did some experiments like copy and paste, like rolling out some ideas and creating like exactly the same that they did. But in a few weeks, actually in few days, sometimes we had to move it and say, well, this question is not quite good. This idea, we need to make it better, and we can improve on that. So it's a way that we can learn from their experience. Cross-pollination is about learning from other people's experience and seeing what good looks like. And you can grab it, you can use it, but you have to adopt it. If you don't do it, you're wasting your time. But it's not bad at all if you just experiment a little bit, like we did early days with that cross-pollination process that we had the chance to work with.
Thanks for your answers for those questions.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you to talk to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fred.
Hello, friends. Here we are back at the end of the session to some live interaction with the speakers. I would like to ask my friend Christina. Christina, if you could please start by asking our leaders, I would appreciate that.
Sure. I would like to ask you, David. So I would like to ask you what is your view of the principles on how to achieve a faster pace? What do you think about that?
Thanks for the question. I think that they're really relevant to all organizations, and some of them resonate more according to where you are in your journey. Excuse me. Early morning croak resonate more with you depending on where you are in your journey. But listening to the stories of everybody when we talk about examples of the principles, they are alive and well in how lean is embedded in healthcare. So for me, I see them as really good basis to be able to move forward through, and to how do you consider where your journey is at.
Thank you. Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Okay.
Please,
Is that okay? So Kiami, I'm going to ask you a question, because I know that
when you were determining your next move and you wanted to focus on stability because there were quite a bit of chaos throughout the campus. You had some pushback from your board of directors that perhaps that wasn't enough or wasn't aggressive enough for the organization to move forward. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, just checking my audio that everybody can hear me. Yes, okay. I think as for those of you who own your own homes, you know that if you're going to spend a lot of money, it's much nicer to buy a new kitchen than it is to fix your sewer system and weatherproof your home, you know, because you want something you can show that looks sexy, that's admirable, that everybody will notice. And I think companies in general, it's much easier to convince your leadership, your board, to do something that is visible, that will give you media coverage, that's shiny, that has a new option for somebody's name to go on it, than it is to work on the nitty gritty of let's make it very convenient for patients so that they can get what they want when they want it quickly. Or let's train our front staff so that they really know what their purpose is and they learn how to solve their problems. So yes, I think part of it is that you do have to retrain your whole environment because we're so used to wanting to do things that get a certain type of recognition, as opposed to doing something that truly changes the experience that your clients, your customers, your patients are having. So yeah, there is that constant desire to build something new, to go with something big, as opposed to granting the stability and trying to solve those daily problems that you have. I mean, eventually you get to those more sexy things if you do it right. But you're correct that I had to convince, and I still do that now, meaning that I do a few more things that are sort of more, you know, visible. But I really do concentrate on what I consider that foundation and that base. And I think they've seen enough results now that I don't get as much pushback when I talk about stability.
Okay, I would like to ask something to Dr. Pinto, because I have some curiosity, because here we have, of course, giants of Lean, but we would like to back to basics a little bit. So we have curiosity about basic question. What was, Dr. Pinto, your first Kaizen, your first A3, your first improvement that you did?
Hi, thank you, Christina. Good to see you all. Miss you all, friends. So, well, my first small lean experiment was on the front desk of a hospital that I was working with, a public hospital, where I was just the medical oncology physician responsible for the practice, but I was not the boss or whatever. It was like 13 years ago. And we had a problem because we had more patients than available appointment slots for those patients, and that's the basic problem for every healthcare system in the world. We have more patients than space available. So we redesigned the flow. It was the first A3 we ever did. We completely redesigned the flow of our patients, where we were able to increase the takt time for an appointment, which means we were able to create more room for doctors to talk to patients. That's amazing. I mean, we were able to organize the flow in a way that we had moved from the medical appointment waste, becoming to a doctor without a blood test ready, without an X-ray ready, whatever. You get to the doctor when everything is ready, and you just don't keep come and go. So. And we also created a lot of savings, eliminated a lot of waste on work around for the people supporting us, nurses and technicians involved with our processes. So it was a great experience, and that was my first experience as a chief architect. So my first design of a process, and then I got the taste for that because it was very successful experiment.
Great. What about you, Dr. Sala? I know that you started as a lean practitioner from a very different position, right, in your hospital. So what about you? What was?
I'm leaving. I have another session right now. Bye bye.
Okay. Okay.
Bye, Dr. Fred. Thank
you
you.
now.
Bye, Dr. Fred. Thank you very much, friend.
Bye, Fred. So yes, Christina, thank you. Thank you for the question.
So we are curious about also knowing what was your first Kaizen, where your first A3, your first improvement.
So actually, after living almost 11 years in the States, I got back to Argentina and I actually learned, violin in the States. So the board actually asked me because, we have a cardiology department here with almost about 70 cardiologists. So what could I add value to the hospital? So we did a review of the hospital, a fast review, and we talked with leaders and tried to find out what they were doing right now, what they wanted to be in about 5 to 10 years, and how they were going to reach there. So the answer was many of them didn't know exactly where they wanted to go. Some of them did know where they wanted to go, but they didn't know how to get there. So I thought that lean was the great cultural change we needed to do to be able to accomplish all these desire that they had, in about 10 years. So I was our first project here involved with physicians was our cardiac rehab program that was developed in 1974 and had been, I would say, a key to our institution, a lot of value to our patients, but it was out of date and it could actually be completely redesigned. So we actually worked to increase capacity, to add value to our patients, to devote more time for the cardiologists with the patients and less waiting, time in between sessions. All the sessions were in series, they were not in parallel. So there was a lot of different opportunities for improvement. So our cardiac rehab program was one of the one of the first physicians involved initiatives that we target in 2012.
Great. Thank you.
We have more time. Denise, I think you should ask a question. I think you.
Oh, I'm happy to ask a question. I'm happy to ask
Please
a
do
question.
that.
These principles are all about trying to fix healthcare faster. That was the position that we wrote these principles from. And as practitioners, we're all frustrated about the pace. And David, I'll start with you, but Kiami, I'm also interested in your view too. But I know, David, you have some frustration around the pace of this work. And probably part B of the question is, I've been quite connected to where the organisation has been, like other organisations, through the ups and downs of COVID. And I think, we have learnt to do things faster in a more agile way over the last 18 months because of need, because we've had to. But I just wonder if you could give me a perspective on how we might approach this issue of trying to build capability faster and what your thoughts on that are.
Thanks, Denise, for calling out the frustrating part. I think that all of us want to get there sooner than later. And one of the things that you have to learn, I think you have to be capable of, is to be patient and to dedicate the time and commitment to actually growing people and supporting them to solve their problems. One of the things that we, as you say, we had to learn to do in COVID was to let go and to have trust and faith and support our teams to solve their problems. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we've had in how we've moved much faster and how we want to keep going now is by letting people and supporting them to solve the problems that are usually really, really hard, really hard to solve, and they need continuous cycles and failures and pick themselves up and go again. For me, I can see the rock going down the hill and gathering speed as it goes when people are capable. So for me, being able to support people to continue on that journey is an area where I think we can go faster.
Thanks, David. Kiami, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I think, as you know, I work closely with Alice, so it's probably irritating for her to see how not as frustrated I am as she is about the pace of change. And partially it's that I think that, number one, healthcare is vast. Like healthcare is vast and the deep, so the opportunity is almost infinite to help improve healthcare. And then second, I'm reminded by a colleague of mine who used to quote a West African proverb, which is, "To go fast, you go alone, but to go far, you go together." And part of how I approach it is, you really have to change the way people think and the way they approach problems, and that takes a long time. For those of you who are parents, you know how long it took you to transform yourself to be a good parent, and then support your children. It was a 10, 15, 20-year endeavor. And if you ask my mother, it's still an ongoing endeavor. And so in my mind, I agree with David. You really have to you have to strike the right balance between pushing for things to move, but also moving at the pace that is possible for the people around you that you're coaching or that you're helping develop. And I think, like I said, healthcare is so deep and so vast. There's all the time in the world. It's not like those problems are going to disappear, or right. Like there's going to be work for us to do. So I think I try to look at it from a positive perspective, and how can I really inject a few nuggets every day in somebody, so in the hopes that in the years to come that will lead to bigger changes. So I don't get too frustrated at the pace of change, particularly since I work in a social justice institution, and particularly since I try to exercise gratitude on a daily level.
Okay, I will add something. Just apologize because Olga cannot be here. She texted me around 1 hour ago. She had 2 acute cases. She was on duty, so probably she cannot be here. So, and this is why we love healthcare, because really it's PDCAs are helping in both ways. So thanks for the both sides on your job. And I will take Professor to I have some curiosity from Kiami, but I also think from Flavio, because Kiami, how do you see Lean when you was, let's say, a simple consultant, just a doctor, and how you see Lean now that you are a CEO? How was your different view from doctor to chief architect to CEO? So how this changed for you?
Is that a question for me first or for Flavio first?
No, it's for Flavio. Flavio has
for you, it's
as well.
I'm not the CEO.
Yes, I think that I don't know if Javier will agree with me, but there's a certain arrogance that you carry when you come out of medical school. And there's this idea that, if you're a physician, you know best. And so I think that where Lean influenced me the most is really this idea that, yes, physicians know a lot about a certain aspect of healthcare, but we're not formally trained in systems or in improvement. And so I think for me, part of my Lean journey was really developing a humility that I had lost to some degree. I had lost through my medical education, because you're really told you have to be in charge. I mean, it's different in different cultures, but my training included such pithy, admonishments as never assume, or never trust anybody else, or right. Like there's all these things that you learn as a physician, and you have to change. I think part of the change for me that probably allowed me to become CEO is that I was undergoing a Lean transformation. That is really the allowing that other people actually might do the job better than I can. That's a big step for a physician to acknowledge, right? If you're a surgeon, if you think that somebody else can do a better job than you shouldn't be doing surgery, right? Like that's right. That's sort of like the basis of being a physician. So I think I would say, Oriol, that the biggest change was really admitting that there are people who can do certain aspects of the job better than I can. And my job as CEO is eliminating the barriers for those people, as opposed to me trying to do the job. I don't know if that's quite what you were asking me, but
yeah, quite very honest. Engineers are worse than doctors, don't worry. And I was asking also Flavio, because you shared the other day with us the story of a change agent that, of course, becomes CEO.
Yes, it's something that it happened here. and it was amazing story because that person was in charge of some clinical and technical stuff, and once she started to do the right thing at the right time and showing the results, it enabled her to become the next level. I mean, the CEO. But I think it would be great to grasp, to understand what Dr. Sala thinks about it, and also David. We have 4 minutes, and I would like to hand it to Dr. Javier.
So I think what Cami just mentioned is very, very important. Learning lean and adopting the culture is actually adopting humility and actually understanding that the front line, the team actually does a lot better job than what you would actually do on your own. So I think that's very important. And as Cami mentioned, in medical school we don't have any type of education. Actually, when I actually went to medical school, we didn't have any type of education of how to improve processes, and actually there was no knowledge about lean when I trained. And so the first I would say aha moment for us is you need to be really humble. You need to be the right leader. Big difference between being a chief and being a leader. You need to understand that, and I think that's the way you actually grow, and that's the way that people will respect you, okay, and follow you, and that's the way you actually can actually have the transformation that you're looking for. But you have to be also patient and very, very patient. I know that we would like to go faster, and we're all looking for that miracle. But I think that the most important thing is actually lead your people, be respectful for them, and also be humble, because we will make a lot of mistakes.
I think that is important because this this chief architect and this area manager are key roles that we discovered in one of our principles. And I will ask this to David. First, David, it's a pleasure to have you here. I have heard a lot about you. So for me, you don't know, but this is really amazing to have you. As a nurse, how you see lean as a nurse and how you see it now, how it changed it?
As a nurse, I guess one of the things that actually Kiami and Yavia mentioned was actually about the drive to make improvement, and some of that is whether you're treating a patient as a doctor you would have, you're trying to make things better for that person. For me, the same thing it comes through as a nurse, is what you're trying to do is to make things better for that person, and just taking that philosophy into how you then lead is what has sat very deeply with me about developing people and being able to make things better for them. And I think it is that you're in service too is so important when you're, as a leader, how do you spread that culture and how do you embed that in the way that the organization works?
Okay. Thank you, very clear. And I see Chris. So Flavio, I don't want to have responsibility. I'm going to...
This is our visual management. This is the way things happen here. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, my friends. Thanks, David. Thanks, Olga. Thanks, Kiami. Thanks, Denise. All of friends. This work was done in by many hands. So I appreciate your participation and thanks for sharing.